Welcome to the local campaign here on Rogers TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Well, as we get closer and closer to Election Day on October 24th, we turn our attention to municipal debates. And today's debate is with Ward 2, Orléans West-Innes. And before I introduce you to our candidates, let me go over the format for all of you at home and, of course, for our candidates here in studio. Each candidate will have an opportunity for an opening statement. We're giving 60 seconds to each of those candidates, the order of which was chosen at random just a few moments ago. So after the opening statements, we begin the debate portion. The way that's going to work, I'm going to ask a candidate a question. They will have 45 seconds to answer the question, and at the end of that 45 seconds, I open it up for debate, the entire floor. And again, I encourage our candidates to jump in at any time. They don't have to wait for me. They can just jump in at any time. Following that debate portion, I'll go back to the candidate for whom I originally asked the question, and they will have 30 seconds to wrap up on that topic. We'll go through that format for quite a few questions and topics, and then at the end of that, we will have our closing statements, and again, each candidate will have 60 seconds for that, and we'll do that in reverse order. So let's introduce you to our candidates for Ward 2, Orléans West-Innes. First up, we have Chris Fraser. Welcome, Chris. Next, we have Lori Stinson. Welcome, Lori. And Laura Dudas. Welcome, Laura. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate your time today, and as I said, appreciate your time at home. Let's start with those opening statements. Chris, you have 60 seconds for your opening statement starting now.
Thank you, Derek. While we enjoy a high quality of life here in Ottawa, residents have spoken to me about a decline in some services in my ward and around the city. Roads and sidewalks go unrepaired, critical infrastructure is allowed to deteriorate, and core services are ignored or cut back. Meanwhile, plans are made for mega legacy projects that are not necessarily vital at this time. The past few terms at City Hall have left many citizens wondering whether our city leaders have the right priorities. No one said that the job of a councillor is easy, but if we get back to basics, our ward and our city can become the best places in Canada to live. I give you my pledge that if elected, I will be a strong, independent voice advocating for common sense policies. We all want value for our tax dollars. If elected to council, that will be my goal on your behalf.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. Next up is Lori Stinson. Lori, you have 60 seconds.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Derek. My name's Lori Stinson. I want to be your candidate for Ward 2, Orléans West-Innes. For 22 years, I've made my home in the Ottawa-Gatineau area, the last 12 of which have been raising my 3 children in Ward 2. I teach political science, social and criminal policy theory, and in the early years, I built and eventually sold my small businesses as I transitioned back to working in education. I am running for City Council because I want to see a municipal government done better, with integrity and commitment to the people they're there to serve. In my ward, we're plagued by out-of-control urban sprawl, lack of honest and meaningful, Freudian slip there, lack of meaningful, honest and meaningful consultation, out-of-control rents, growing suburban poverty, the transit system that serves no one. We're losing our ability to enjoy our natural environment. So I want to see a City Council that responds to residents meaningfully and honestly consults and works with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lori. Over to you, Laura Dudas. You have 60 seconds as well.
Thank you, Derek. It has been an absolute honor to serve my community at City Hall for the past 4 years. Prior to being elected, I served as the president of the Blackburn Community Association for nearly a decade, and I've spent my whole life volunteering and giving back to our community. It's part of who I am, it's what I do, and it's really set the tone for my time on council. Over the past 4 years, we've accomplished a lot for our community together. We've been able to see millions of dollars reinvested in our aging infrastructure, such as road repavings and making sure that our parks and green spaces are being invested in and wisely. But at the same time, I've been fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. We need to ensure that City Hall is not frivolously spending tax dollars and making sure that we're investing in what really matters in the East End. I want to continue to fight for our priorities at City Hall. On October 24th, I am asking for your continued support to continue what we started together.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent start, everybody. Thanks for those opening statements. Chris, I come back to you, and again, you'll have 45 seconds. Let's start with one of the biggest files, and that is public transit. And we've heard a lot about the LRT. Some people are even saying maybe we should revisit even phase 3 of the LRT. And we have a bus system that used to be an award-winning bus system, and we're seeing cancellations all over the place and frustrated residents. What are some of the solutions to that? Chris, you have 45 seconds to open.
Well, I have been a transit user since I was a small boy, and I'm going to date myself. I can actually remember when we had the old brown buses, way before even the extended buses. So I have a lot of experience riding OC Transpo, and I am a OC Transpo user, including the LRT. Now, many people complain about the bus service. Sometimes when you complain about it, before you complain, actually use it, try it out, and see how it works. Now, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of our transit system. It works fairly well for getting people into town to work, but going from neighborhood to neighborhood, it can be a challenge. But I use the system, and I'll give you some more tips on how we can make the system better.
Okay, excellent. I open it up to the floor. Go ahead.
I was a regular transit user until the LRT debacle started, okay? I could hop on the commuter bus first thing in the morning and get to my workplace in 35 minutes. Okay, now I'm lucky if it's an hour and a half, if everything's working. And I'm not alone. You know, all across Ward 2, really all of Orleans, we're in exactly the same boat. I've spent, the fall and the winter picking up my kids from all over the city when transit was breaking down. We need to.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were okay.
No.
Okay, we need actually to fully investigate the LRT inquiry. We need to systematically address everything that's in that. Laura, our incumbent, actually voted against the public inquiry altogether. We need to hold our city council accountable, and we actually need to take radical action. We need commuter transit.
Let's let Laura answer to that, and
I'm happy to jump in. So I am a public transit user. I've used it for decades. I've used it all throughout. Absolutely never stopped, and I enjoy taking transit in our city, although I will say that in the East End, our local transit has failed us. We can't get from A to B within our communities. What we see is that the commute downtown has always been the focus, but the local neighborhood connections has not been there. What will happen with LRT in 2024 is that OC Transpo is pledging to have that hub and spoke premise where we'll be revising and looking at the routes as they stand in the East End. And I'm really looking for that opportunity and making sure that if you're a user in Convent Glen and you're trying to get up to Innes Road, you have that direct access. We'll have the opportunity to look at North.
Go ahead, Lori, quickly,
City
and then I want to
Council
come back
has
to Chris.
consistently said they were going to do certain things and done exactly the opposite. I voted for Laura last time around. I had her lawn sign on my front steps. She did not represent us the way I knew we needed to be represented.
Okay, I'd like to come back to Chris here, and then we'll continue.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, as your position as Deputy Mayor of Ottawa, the residents are expecting more of a Deputy Mayor, because if the transportation system is not what it should be in the East End, then as Deputy Mayor, you would have the connections and the pull, hopefully at City Hall, to get those things done and get the system improved.
So I would have to say that there is a bit of a misconception about the role of a deputy mayor or a city councillor in terms of city operations. We have city staff that are fully aware and professional, experienced, and know how to move the systems around. I have one example that it's perfect. We have a Chapel Hill Park and Ride that was established years ago for $8.5 million. And I worked closely with OC Transpo to get a dedicated bus route to that park and ride. All of a sudden the pandemic hit, everything froze. All of the routes had to be re-looked at and reduced. And now we're still recovering from that process. That doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be revising our local neighborhood routes right now.
Yeah,
and I look forward to, as
just
councillor,
get downtown. We actually want to be able to live in our neighborhoods. We want to be able to, have small businesses there that can serve our needs. I mean, if anything, what the pandemic did, it reconnected us with our actual neighborhoods.
And I absolutely agree. And I thank you for kind of validating what I've just said, because neighborhood roots are going to be key to ensuring that we have an effective and convenient public transit system going forward. I think that in the East End,
we got a lot of going to be last time round too.
In the East End, we have seen that we had the highest rate of public transit users pre-pandemic and pre-LRT. We need to get back to that point to make sure that we have convenient routes that work for us.
Okay, you know what? Let's end it there. Chris, I'll come back to you. You've got 30 seconds to wrap up on this topic.
Okay. As I said earlier, I am a Transpo user, and a lot of people trash talk the LRT. I'm one of the few people in my neighborhood who actually talks highly of it, because I was using it pre-pandemic to get from Blackburn Hamlet to Place de Portage and back, and it was actually saving me 10 minutes each way. A lot of people find that hard to believe, but I like to promote OC Transpo. I still use the transit system and the LRT. I used it for Blues Fest, and it works, but we can always make it work better.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's continue on debate questions. Lori, next topic is to you, and let's talk housing. We've heard a lot about the lack of affordable housing, and in particular, I'm hearing from people a lack of affordable rental housing. What are some of the solutions to get some of that affordable housing here into the city of Ottawa? You have 45 seconds to open up here, Lori.
We have to get developments to adhere to commitments to maintain affordable housing within those residences. City Council has to do what they say they're going to do on affordable housing. Again, Laura voted against affordable housing when our 10-year housing and homeless plan came forward. I know in my neighborhood, I live very close to a shopping center on Orléans Boulevard, and over the summer we had young people living in their cars out there. It's a huge issue. I had other people contact me who actually lost their homes throughout the pandemic as rents skyrocketed and went out. It's actually at a crisis situation, and we have to take radical action.
Okay, I open up the floor.
So
Feel free.
I'm going to answer that. I actually did vote in favor of our 10-year housing and homelessness plan. And actually, I'm quite proud of the work that the city is trying to accomplish with it. In fact, in the early 2000s, support from the city was about $1 million. And now we're looking at about $22 to $25 million annually towards addressing the housing crisis that we have, and we do have it. And I have
That's
to
actually
be
not
frank.
entirely correct. You have voted against more affordable housing. It's in the public record.
Tell me what did I vote against?
You voted specifically against more affordable housing when the 10-year housing and homeless plan came forward.
That's absolutely not
expanding
true.
it.
I voted
Then you
in
want to get
favor.
that public record corrected.
I am very, very, very happy that the city's making giant strides towards addressing housing, and particularly affordable rental housing for our communities. In the East End, we are not seeing the type of developments that we need to make sure that people who have lower incomes or people who are on fixed pensions and want to stay in the community
Okay,
can
Laura,
do so.
I'll stop you there because I'd like to get Chris in here, please.
One of the things we need to address is how difficult we're making it for developers to actually build housing. The fees are going up astronomically, so builders want to build, but we keep on increasing the fees and making it difficult for builders to build.
We're actually not making it difficult for builders to build. If anything, development and sprawl is completely out of control. Maybe in other areas of the city, but most definitely not in our ward or the rest of Orleans.
Well, if you talk
we
to
have key developments going in Blackburn. There's a 9-story building going in on Innes Road, backing onto residential, housing and everything else. They claim they did community consultation. I could literally find one person who was involved in any consultation whatsoever, they actually said it was told to them that it wasn't.
So I'm going to jump in that and say developments have to be. They have to fit in with the characteristics of the community.
Then
we
why
can't have a 27-story building right next to 2 stories. The 9-story building that is being proposed for that site in Blackburn, I'm opposed to, and I've been working closely with the community. I went door to door and made sure that every resident along that street and in the vicinity of this development
why haven't you been at
of public
meetings
consultation.
discussing it, actually with?
I have been at every single meeting. In fact, I've spearheaded all of the meetings for every development that has been in our community. In fact, I haven't seen you at one of them. So
I was invited. Well, I only decided to run right before the election was announced, and I've actually been invited by all kinds of community groups since then, and I've been there for every single one.
Lauren, I'm going to come back to Chris because Lori, you'll have a chance to wrap, but I'd like to get Chris in here again, please.
We also have to change our mindset about urban sprawl. People keep on talking about urban sprawl and how it's bad. Urban sprawl has been happening since the 50s and 60s. Blackburn Hamlet was the outskirts when I was in public school. Now it's almost like the middle of the city. So that as the city gets bigger, we have to expand and we have to allow developers to
We're in a
develop
different
land.
environment now. We have actually
it's always
critical
going to change.
issues we have to respond
We're
to.
immigrating
Climate change.
300,000 people a year to Canada.
But when we're
Where are
doing
they all
this,
going to live?
and we're just well, actually, we can reinvent the neighborhoods we already have.
The City
We
of
can make
Ottawa
changes
is
there.
anticipating 400,000 new residents to our community in the next 25 years. We have to have housing that accommodates the growing need at different income levels. I've been very, very proud to put forward motions that spoke to the future of inclusionary zoning as part of the developments that are coming forward to make sure that we're providing housing for people, mixed use accommodations. The Orleans Quarter Study was just passed the other day at committee, and I look forward to passing it at council, that will provide for developments that are appropriate to our community and bring economic development to St. Joseph, which is in much need of that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I'll come back to you, Lori. You have 30 seconds to wrap on the topic here.
Well, affordable housing is part of a much, much larger issue. As I started to say before, I got contacted by people in our area who actually lost their homes with the steep jump in rental prices. We actually need to address the cost of living, the way it's been driven up, in not just our ward, but right across the city. We are growing and creating homelessness. We're actually driving people out of our neighborhoods, nowhere else to go but way across the river and to the other side in an attempt to find affordable.
Thank you very much, Lori. Laura, I'll start with you for the next topic. This goes back to some of the basics that residents in your ward and other wards throughout the city are worried about, and that is road safety, safety around school zones, aggressive driving, stunt driving. It's one of the biggest issues that I keep hearing from residents. How are we going to fix that issue? You've got 45 seconds to begin here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derick. It's something I'm hearing from our community as well, about community safety, about the need to have safer roads for all residents of all mobility types. I've been very, very, very lucky to have a very engaged community. We've worked very closely together to identify some of the traffic issues on local residential streets, on major arterials, to make sure that we're introducing traffic calming measures that are appropriate, that are effective, that can be piloted, and then we can go back and make sure that they're actually achieving the goal that we're looking to set out. We need to make sure that children can get to school safely, and we've been working closely with schools to make sure that walking programs are in place. We've been working closely with the cycling community to make sure that we're putting in the needed infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. I open it up to the floor. Go ahead and jump in. Lori, Chris?
Our roads are not safe. Our paths are not safe. If we cycle, there's no safe cycling place anywhere in our ward. Lots of times if you want to travel around Orleans Boulevard, even for kids getting to school and stuff, your best bet's actually the sidewalk, which is not actually legal. But okay, we need, we're losing our natural areas. We're losing our trails through those. Those need to be protected as public space, not go along with, particular residents who want no public access to those public green spaces. We actually do need much, much safer roads for everyone driving on them, and of course, for cyclists, active transit, for...
I'll get Chris in here, and just a reminder, we're looking for solutions for this too, right? Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I think one of the solutions is having more police patrolling our area. I know my neighborhood is very safe, and I don't have that much complaints with the safety of the roads itself, but it would be nice to have police officers in the area just driving around in their cruisers, just having that presence so that people know that there are eyes on the road. You only see police cruisers when there's trouble, but we need to have them at times when there's
So we don't have enough police. We absolutely don't. I have residents that are calling my office and saying, listen, Laura, can we have a police officer enforcing this stop sign? Can we have them on our street doing speeding blitzes? And once again, I'm reaching out to community officers and they're saying that they just don't have the people. So that's just not a viable option at this time. But what we can be doing, and what I have been very, very happy to work with our communities on, are trying out traffic calming measures that are appropriate for the community, the flex stakes, speed bumps when they're appropriate, making sure that the community is seeing tangible results. And I would have to say too that keeping our multi-use pathways through our parks and things is absolutely a priority of mine. I was really, really pleased to work with the community to have winter maintenance expanded to some of our multi-use pathways to ensure that there was accessibility for all users even during the winter months.
Thank you, Laura. Lori, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. We misunderstand the whole policing problem and policing question. We've been increasing budgets to police forces for years, but we haven't actually gotten more officers on the street for that. Simply the budget has grown. We actually have not many more officers on the street now than we did back in the late 1970s. And that one's really easy to check through any Ottawa police officer you want to speak to. We also, Ottawa's literally the safest city in Canada. We're one of the top. I think we're still the safest. Okay? We have complete misconceptions about the problem of crime that's out there. Traffic calming and all those sorts of things can be much more readily accomplished by then wasting valuable police resources by redesigning our streets, putting in calming measures on there, by putting in those things that come out of the street.
Laura, you're going to have a chance to wrap up. I'll just get Chris in here, please.
Yeah. Well, there's also a responsibility of residents too. We have to observe our speed limits and the rules of the road. So not everything can be solved by government intervention. So I really encourage citizens out there to please be mindful of your fellow citizens when you're driving. Observe the speed limits, the traffic signals. I know we're all in a hurry to get where we want to go, but citizens also have a responsibility to obey the rules of the road. And when they don't, the penalties should be very harsh. When it comes to the drag racing, I hear them at nighttime. I'm in my bed, I hear these drag racers. Who is stopping these people? How are they doing this without any penalties? Increase the penalties and the drag racing will go right down.
Okay, well, let's leave it there. Back to you, Laura, for 30 seconds to wrap up, please.
Thank you. For everybody who lives in the East End, they know that the vast majority of our road infrastructure was built 30, 40, 50 years ago. And none of it was built to accommodate cycling or to be pedestrian friendly. It was built for cars. So that makes it incredibly difficult to revise and rebuild these roads. I've been so pleased to work with the community, associations, different stakeholders over the past 4 years to identify roads that are opportunities to provide safer communities, safer for everyone.
Thank you very much, Laura. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I come back to you, Chris. Again, you'll have 45 seconds to open. Listen, you all mentioned policing. So we've heard some candidates who want to raise the police budget, some candidates who want to freeze the police budget. We have talks of reallocating some of that money to government agencies that are funded by the municipality. So what should be done with the police services, with the budget? I'll start with you, as I said, Chris. You have 45 seconds.
Well, we've heard a lot of talk. It started about a year or two ago in the United States, people talking about defunding the police, which I don't know why that sounds like a good idea to some people, but it doesn't sound like a good idea to me. Our city is growing. We were 1 million people now. It was only like 300,000 when I was in high school. So as the city grows, we're going to need an increased police force to police our city. I think that the police have a very tough job. In some ways, we have handcuffed the police. Things like carding, for example, the Ontario government has decided to go against the carding program. And the police, their job is tough enough already. We don't need to put more restrictions on police and how they can question people and do their job effectively.
Okay, I open up the floor. Go ahead.
I would have to say that this debate has taken on an either-or mentality, and sadly, legitimate concerns and grievances are getting lost. It's not about cutting budgets, it's about the roles and the responsibility of the police. Mental health calls, for instance, we should not have police going to those types of calls. We have community groups, social providers in our community who are better trained, have the experience, and should be addressing those issues. It's about identifying where police should be and where they shouldn't be. And as I said before, There is a lack of resources within our police force. I had an officer who reached out to me. It was
There's
heartbreaking.
actually not a lack of
I had an
resources.
officer.
That budget's been
I'll
growing
just finish.
every
I had an
year.
officer who reached out to me who said that he was on a call. It was a night shift, and he indicated that the officers were on calls all night. And at the end of the night, at 7 a.m., there was still 13 calls from residents in the queue, and officers have not had the opportunity to even just do a random patrol, just to keep an eye on things.
Okay,
we need
thanks,
to
Laura.
rectify that.
Go
What
ahead,
needs
Lori.
to happen is City Council needs to sit down and actually look item by item at that policing budget. Laura's really right. The officers on the ground don't have the supports that they actually need. But that's largely because that's not where our money's been going. Although 80 to 90% of police budgets go to staffing, most of that staffing is not officers on the street, not officers on the ground. We do need to go back and push for a reallocation of many funds, especially where it's not actually doing what we want. Officers on the street when we actually really need them. We do need, she's bang on the money, we do need an allocation, reallocation of an awful lot of that to mental health services and people that are much more able to deal with it and manage it, rather than asking officers to do things they're not trained for, and quite frankly, they shouldn't be stuck with.
I do want to address that
I got
issue.
one more point, sorry. As we've cut all kinds of other public and social services, the only one that we've kept in place has been policing. And as a consequence, we're asking them to do a ridiculous amount of things
Okay.
that's not
I think we
Thank you.
have
Go
to
ahead.
address that issue of mental health calls, because a person calls the police and maybe there's an issue, a domestic issue. It could be a mental health issue, but we want to be careful that we don't have people going to the door trying to act as police, trying to calm down the situation, and then it escalates, and then you need somebody with the experience of a policeman
We do
to
have
use force. Because we had a
absolutely-
situation a few years ago in the city where a gentleman was died after an altercation with the police. It started out maybe as a mental health issue, but then it escalated to the point where somebody died. So
There's
we have to
loads
be
of
very,
things.
very
I'm going to
careful.
provide.
ahead,
I'm
Laura.
going to provide just a bit of clarity on the role of council versus the Ottawa Police Board. So the Ottawa Police Board, which is a civilian entity that is established by the province, it sets the police budget every year, and then what happens is that it then goes to council, which then approves the budget. If council does not approve the budget, the board and the police force are able to go to the province to override that decision. So once again, that's just for clarity for
But
those who
taking
may
it
not
more
know that.
public,
What
we
I would
can
have
actually
to
bring
say
people
is
in on it
we
and
know,
address it with the provincial
we
government.
absolutely know that cuts to the police force will mean that frontline officers are cut. What we need to see is a more diverse police force. We need to see more women, more members of the BIPOC community, more members of the LGBTQ+ community. We need to see them there because
thank you,
lived
Laura.
experience makes a
Lori,
huge difference.
Come in here before Chris
This is
has
actually a
chance.
problem, not just for us here, but really right across the country. It's gotten much, much worse over the last few years when we've had, particular provincial governments that are actually not supporting communities and what they want, how they want funds allocated. But in all sorts of communities right across the country that actually have reallocated, brought in mental health people to deal with emergencies, it's worked brilliantly. The case just now in Vancouver, the folks were out there trying to deal with it, and unfortunately the police shoved a victim to the ground.
Thank you, Lori. Chris, you have 30 seconds here to wrap up on the topic.
Okay. Well, getting to Laura's point she made a few minutes ago about having a diverse police force, I don't think anyone is opposed to having diversity in the police force or any other government services, but we want to hire the best people also. We don't want to be just checking off boxes to say that we've got this group, that group, and the other group. We want the best, well-trained people to police our city because it's a tough job. And it's not a checkbox thing, it's getting the right people with the right temperament and the right experience to police our city to keep Ottawa safer.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all our candidates. All right, over to you, Lori, for the next topic. Another big topic that everyone's talking about in this particular election is the environment and climate change, and what role can and should a municipality play when it comes to protecting the environment and finding solutions for climate change. You have 45 seconds to begin.
There's loads of things we can do. An awful lot of the impacts of climate change and what we have to deal with all happens at the municipal level, even when federal and provincial governments are in charge of it. So for a starter, we need to become an activist city council, and we need to be hammering at our provincial and our federal governments. There's absolutely no reason why we can't. All kinds of others have. We also need to target and pay attention to how our new housing and new development is going in. An awful lot of the new developments in our area are costing us all another $465 per year just in our increased taxes in order to service those in a way that's actually not sustainable for the future. We actually need to regrow a canopy or grow and regrow a canopy in many
Okay, and
cases.
you'll be able to get back to some of your solutions. I'll open it up to everybody here.
This is a very important issue, and it needs to have a joint and concerted effort by all levels of government. But to Lori's point, it is definitely an opportunity for the municipality to go even further than it already has to improve our local environment. And the city has declared a climate emergency, which I did support,
We
and
declared climate
absolutely
emergency, but then
approved
you
the
voted
energy
against putting more
evolution.
money towards
It
it.
is important that we start addressing the issues and making sure that our infrastructure is prepared for the climate change impacts that are to come. We have seen that what were supposed to be once in a century storms are now happening all the time. We're having floods almost every year. We're seeing tornadoes touch down. The May 21st storm was a huge impact on our community. Areas of our city were devastated. We need to continue to rebuild our tree canopy. I've been very proud to plant hundreds of new trees in my ward alone and to support the expansion of the Trees and Trust program for all residents across the city.
Okay, thanks, Laura. You'll have another chance. Chris, go ahead.
Well, I know people are very passionate about the environment issue, and that's admirable, but the environmental issue and climate change have become a political football at all levels of government, and we need to transition to fact and evidence-based discussions before jumping on board policies that are trendy but not practical in the long run. I did attend the mayoral debates a few nights ago, and it was basically on the environment here in Orleans. There were people lined up at the microphone with their opinions, and I stayed after the meeting and talked to people with various opinions on the environment. It's not something we can solve here in 2 minutes, but I'm willing to, hopefully before the end of the campaign, have like a mini summit where people can come and talk about these issues. But we're spending millions of dollars getting ready for electric cars, electric buses. Do we really know the value of these electric buses? Is it really going to change our environment? Is it going to change the climate by spending millions of dollars on electric buses? I don't know if that's...
Hold on, Laura. Go ahead, Lori, and then I'll come to you.
You've got great points there. We actually do need to be involving the scientific community and actually, adhering to the knowledge that we actually do already have out there. We're not doing that now. The current city council, although they went along with declaring climate change a priority, again, the existing council members voted against increasing climate funding. It is absolutely urgent. I know everyone I've talked to so far in my ward didn't even see city workers come out to deal with the trees. I was really lucky in my neighborhood. I have a great neighborhood. Guys were actually piling out there with their own.
Go ahead,
I'm
Laura.
going to defend
Sorry,
city
Laura, you
staff.
have a chance here.
I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
speak to that about city staff being in our community. As soon as that Durancho hit, not only was I in the community, but city staff were in the community.
Where?
And they worked non-stop. They haven't even stopped. We continue to see devastation in places like Chapel Hill Forest, in areas across our city. We need to make sure that we're trying to prioritize planting trees, making sure that we're investing in that. I was very, very happy to also pass a motion that looks at our archaic right-of-way bylaws
Even
to
in
ensure that
Blackburn
residents
Hamlet,
can plant
by the community garden,
natural.
there's all kinds of trees,
You-
all
you're-
just knocked down and
I
left.
would love it
They're
if I
actually
could
a
just
hazard.
finish my sentence. What I was going to say was that we could be able to see residents also diversify their right-of-ways, plant natural habitats, drought-resistant habitats on their right-of-ways. I'm very proud to have put forward that motion. And I'm
Okay,
also
Laura,
very...
stop there. Get Chris here for the last 20 seconds, and then you can wrap up.
Okay. Well, we haven't even talked about things like waste management, and that's part of the environment too. How can we better dispose of our waste? Other communities around the world are doing fantastic things in waste management and also cleaning up our rivers. Once again, I can't summarize all that in 10 seconds, but those are issues that we haven't talked about that we should be talking about.
Thank you, Chris. Laura, you have 30 seconds to wrap up.
What we really need to be doing here is simply working with our scientific community, actually talking to residents and explaining things. When disasters do occur, we really actually do need to be out there in a much more timely fashion. I know I live in a fairly high density area and we still haven't seen anyone, but I was lucky enough to have amazing neighbors that were piling in with chainsaws and helping each other out, even taking trees off people's roofs and things like that. but still no one's been around. And canvassing, I talked to all kinds of people in Blackburn where dangerous trees were down and nothing was done.
Thank you very much, Lori. Over to you, Laura, for the beginning of this next topic. Let's go back to some basics here, because one of the things I'm hearing from your ward and many wards is the state of the roads. And people are frustrated with the state of the roads, the sidewalks, pathways, on and on. It's been an ongoing problem. And scheduling that work around other infrastructure. They don't feel that that people are working together when they work on major infrastructure jobs. 45 seconds to you to begin this conversation, Laura.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derick. This is an absolutely important issue, particularly in the East End. As I said before, we have a community which was built 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we're seeing that the roads do not accommodate the growth, that we're not able to keep up with some of the work that's required. What we need to do is continue to invest in our infrastructure, but do it in a fiscally responsible way so that we're getting the most bang for our buck. During the past term of council, and in this year in particular, the city has made extensive investments in our road repair. For instance, I was able to secure $2.5 million for the resurfacing, restructuring of Jeanne d'Arc, something that had been decades on the books and still wasn't on the books until I had really advocated to get that done. We're going to see shovels in the ground in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Laura. I open up the floor again. Go ahead.
I genuinely think City Council's done a reasonable job on road maintenance and everything else out in Orleans, really right across it. The problem really there is much more safe, active transport, especially for cyclists, transit, of course, access to transit. But, you know, our roads are not actually all that bad. We've done a good job. Traffic calming measures would go a long way. And then, of course, you know, we need safe ways for our kids to get back and forth to school, for people to ride around to our neighborhoods. And we need less focus on, you know, all of us trying to get downtown, because a lot of us are getting pretty happy in Orleans and looking to stay there.
Chris, go ahead.
One of the things I heard on a recent radio talk show is that the most popular type of claim by citizens against the city is damage to their cars caused by potholes. And for people in my ward, in this road, there's certain parts in this road this winter, it was like an obstacle course trying to weave around all these potholes and making sure your tires weren't broken by sinking into a little mini sinkhole. So that's what I've been hearing from residents, that we need to fix our roads. I know it's winter and I know that the spring brings cracking and whatnot, but we really need to stay on top of that. Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry. What I was going to say is I completely agree, and I actually really appreciate Lori's comments about the roads. We're also talking about our sidewalks. We need to talk about PXO, so pedestrian crossings, and our multi-use pathways. Everything is getting older, and it takes money and it takes time to get those repaired. I was very, very, very happy to support the motion to dedicate 1% of taxes this term of council towards closing that infrastructure gap, because when I came to council in 2018, the gap stood at $73 million. We've now brought that to about $40 million. And that means that we're starting to see those improvements. We have a long way to go, and I'm committed to fiscally responsibly looking at how we can continue to invest in those infrastructure improvements while making sure that residents see tangible results.
What we really need to do on that one, and you know, roads are going well. Potholes, you know, some of us have to take it a little bit easier on the city with that one, because we live all over Lita Clay. And there's only so much you can do reasonably, especially with climate change. Okay, we do, however, need to really address the transit issue. That's actually going to go an awful long way to fixing a lot of our problems with our roads and our infrastructure. If we can all access transit much easier to get across. I talked to residents in Convent Glen that have no access any longer to Innes. Our transit system always had minor gaps in it, but that world-class system was serving us pretty well, with needing a few adjustments prior to, you know, embarking on the LRT.
Chris, do you want to get in here?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just the little things that might not affect everybody, but I live not too far from a seniors home in Blackburn Hamlet, and across the street from the seniors home, in the wintertime, the sidewalk, it's all slanted and it gets really icy. And I shudder to think of what it would be like for a senior to have to walk across the street to the shopping center and then slip and fall because it wasn't drained properly and the ice is just like a skating rink. So those are little things that make a big difference to a community.
Absolutely.
And we need to pay attention to those things, because those are the things that bring up the quality of life. things like sidewalk maintenance in the wintertime.
I totally agree with you.
You know what? Actually, I'll stop it there. And sorry, Laura, I'll just stop it there because I think the conversation's kind of wound itself up. But I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up here.
Perfect.
Okay?
No, I'm very glad to hear the positive feedback about this. I think once again, we need to continue to improve our winter maintenance standards. I was very happy that we saw that was reviewed and new standards were implemented, seeing that there's clearing of sidewalks as a priority and making sure that people can get around. We need to continue to see investment in our aging infrastructure, sidewalks, multi-use pathways, roads. It all needs to see attention. That's going to take money, and we need to do it in a fiscally responsible way.
All right, thank you very much. Excellent job. Okay, that'll do it for our debate portion. We're going to go into a Q&A portion. The format is different here. There's no debate whatsoever. I'll ask you, each of you, the exact same question. You'll have 60 seconds each to answer the question, and I'll start with you over here, Chris. Let's talk about transparency and the lack thereof, according to many residents. They don't feel there's enough public consultation. They're looking for innovative ways to have their voices heard. What can we do to help with that lack of transparency and lack of public consultation that many are talking about? You have 60 seconds, Chris.
Well, a lot of people do talk about transparency, but I think the real issue in government leadership is integrity. The system is only as good and reliable as the people who operate the systems. For example, in professional sports, if your team is not performing well, either the coach or the manager will get fired, players get demoted or released from their contracts. It's harsh, but it's also a way of ensuring top performance and accountability. There's been much finger pointing, for example, with the LRT. What one company says that it's not our fault, the engineers say it's not their fault, City Council says it's not our fault. So there's a lot of finger pointing going on, but really it comes down to integrity in government and making sure that people are accountable, and if they're not doing their jobs properly, then they have to be released and let somebody competent come in and do the job.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you very much, Chris. Over to you, Lori. Same topic, 60 seconds for you as well.
Good point on putting together transparency and integrity. That's a key thing that's been lacking with most of the current City Council. We get told one thing and they actually do another. Decisions made behind closed doors are actually impacting all of us. The new affordable housing that I already brought up, McKinney actually voted to add more to affordable housing than just the current 15 million. Instead, we get a tax break to a Porsche dealership rather than support of taxpayers. Lansdowne was done with Lansdowne 2.0 was done with zero consultation to the public. We have countless decisions like this where we were unable to, or we were never given the opportunity to really consult meaningful with City Council or to hold them accountable after the fact. Although I should correct myself there. We have the opportunity to do that now.
All right, thank you very much. Laura, again, same topic, over to you for 60 seconds.
Thank you. This is actually something that's really near and dear to my heart as a community association president for, as I said, nearly a decade. This is one of the main reasons why I ran for council in the first place, was to provide that transparency, public consultation, and engagement with the community. I do want to correct something, that the motion that was put forward to proceed with the review of Lansdowne actually included a very comprehensive public consultation component. So there will be many opportunities for people to consult on that. As a councillor, I've prided myself on being accessible to the community, even in the midst of the pandemic. I was door knocking outside of election. I love talking to people at the doors. I like talking to people right now at the doors. It's been one of my favorite things to do. I've put out newsletters, put out councillor columns in the Orléans Star, made sure that my website is constantly updated, provided input on Facebook and on social media, and I call people back when they call me. So it's important that city councillors are accessible to the community, and I've always prided myself on being so.
Thank you very much, Laura. All right, same format. We'll start with Lori this time. Again, 60 seconds to each of the candidates here. Let's talk about the budget itself, because everyone's been talking about freezing the tax increase or bringing it up minimally. However, there's growing concern over debt. So where do we set tax increases over the next 4 years, taking that into account? Laura, you have 60 seconds.
I genuinely do think our taxes are high. We actually pay some of the highest in Canada for a municipality. There's no way we're going to be able to cut taxes anytime soon, but we do need to sit down and do a line by line. and go through. We need to change how we're spending it. An awful lot of the projects we all do are public business or corporate partnerships that are a ridiculous waste of money. We have had 40 years in Canada to look at how effective these could or could not be. There's actually no evidence to date whatsoever that they actually work. All they do is cost us way more money. The LRT is the perfect example. We're stuck with, what, $30 million a year in maintenance costs alone? Oh, wait, to another private consortium. They're not public infrastructure programs we're doing. It is literally corporate welfare. We can do it better publicly.
Okay, thank you very much, Lori. Over to you, Laura. Again, 60 seconds on the same topic.
This is actually something I'm hearing as the most pressing concern for residents when I'm talking to them at the door. It's about affordability, and it's about ensuring that their tax dollars are being put to good use, but that we're not being frivolous with them. And love them or hate them, Mayor Jim Watson has made it his priority over the past 12 years to ensure that property taxes were kept at a predictable and affordable level of about 2 to 3%. We know that the province is going to be doing its impact assessments in the coming years. They've put it off for years to come. We know that the valuation on our homes has increased well beyond the 2016 rates. We're going to be in for sticker shock. It's absolutely imperative that City Hall in the next 4 years lives within its means. We need to ensure that we're doing that. And I would like to just point out that the City of Ottawa, and to Lori's point, has engaged in many P3s, some of them being Shankman Arts Centre, the Hornet's Nest. Many of our provincial partners have done so for the Health Hub. We've seen benefits from P3s that take
Laura,
the risk off
you're
of
out of time,
taxpayers.
but thank you very much. Excellent work there for both of you. Let's go over to Chris here. Same topic. Chris, 60 seconds for you.
Well, my approach, if I'm sitting around the council table representing you, I'll take the same approach I do in my personal life as I would around the council table, which is to do a line-by-line review, which I had to do last year when I left my job after 38 years in the federal government. I realized that my budget, my income was going to shrink by about 30%. So what did I do? I went line by line, listed all my expenses, and tried to find where I could economize. For example, I ended up changing car insurance companies to save some money. I negotiated a better phone deal with my phone company, and I was able to renegotiate my mortgage terms and bring the terms down to help suit my budget. So using that kind of mindset, I would bring that to City Hall and look where we can save and economize and budget line by line and make sure that we're doing that on behalf of you, the taxpayer.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. All right, we have one more question here. It's the same format, and I'll start over with you this time, Laura. Back in January of 2020, the Ottawa City Council unanimously declared homelessness an emergency. It's only worsened since then for a variety of reasons, but what are some of the solutions to help tackle homelessness? You have 60 seconds to open.
We absolutely need to build more housing. It's imperative. The city is going to be experiencing an increase of residents, about 400,000 new residents in the next 25 years. They need to have homes, but we also need to make sure that we're providing housing for our most in need, those who are our most vulnerable, who are living on the streets now. The waiting list is far too long. Absolutely too long for people who need that housing. And the city has been investing through their housing and homelessness plan, the 10-year housing and homelessness plan, which I did support, to make sure that we're chipping away at that. But it is never going to be enough until we ensure that people have homes through our community. We need to cut the red tape to make sure that housing is being built. We need to make sure that we have mixed types of housing for people who are on fixed incomes, to make sure that we're closing that gap between people who have affordability issues and actually living in a home of their own.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll come back to Chris this time. Chris, as I said, same topic, 60 seconds for you on the topic.
One thing I wish you would stop doing is stop using the term emergency for every situation that comes up. Everything is not an emergency. Homelessness is an issue that we have to deal with, certainly. And affordable housing is a supply and demand situation, but not everything is an emergency. We need to build smarter. For example, we have the LRT line, and I see as I go past Gloucester that there are more buildings going up, condos going up. No, obviously not every homeless person can afford to live in a condo like that. But one of the things I have done as a homeowner is to share my house. I have had students workers in my house. A few years ago, I had a fellow from Afghanistan stay with me for a few years. So there are a lot of homeowners like myself who have space. Let people share your home, and so they can save some money, get their feet on the ground, and then get out there and save money for their own homes. So I share my house, and I'm still doing that right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Lori, over to you, 60 seconds for the same topic.
Homelessness is not a one solution issue. It is a huge and growing problem right across Canada. It was radically accelerated during the pandemic as many mental health issues became a much bigger issue. We actually need to rebuild and restore social and public services in our communities. People need services and access there. They do need access to emergency shelters and emergency housing. Building new developments is not going to do anything for the growing population of housing. Orleans is a perfect example. We have more new housing out there than anyone knows what to do with. It's largely destroyed the nice, quiet little neighborhoods we moved there for. Now, instead, what we actually do need is we have to be forcing developers to allocate to absolutely genuinely affordable housing in every single new development, which council actually said they were going to do, although no one is being held to account on any of that.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so that does it for that format. We're going to move into our closing statements now. Each candidate, as I mentioned off the top, will have 60 seconds for their closing statement, and we'll do that in reverse order. So we start with Laura Dudas. Laura, you have 60 seconds here.
Thank you very much, Derick. And thank you for this experience. I actually want to thank my fellow candidates here who've put their name forward. This is not an easy process, and I want to congratulate them on putting their name on the ballot. I have been absolutely honored and humbled to serve our community as its city councillor over the past 4 years. This has been one of the most incredible experiences that I have ever had, and I would love to continue to have your support to continue the work. I would encourage you to visit my website at voteforlaura.ca. I've listed my priorities, my vision for Orleans and the City of Ottawa. And reach out to me. I'm always accessible. I'm happy to talk about any of the things that matter to you because they matter to me. Your priorities are always going to be my priorities. I represent our community. On October 24th, I'm asking for your support once again to finish the work that we started. We can do this together.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Over to you, Lori Stinson. You have 60 seconds for your closing statement.
So, I'm running for City Council. It was a last-minute decision in many ways because I haven't actually been happy with the promises that were made to me last election. I spent a fair bit of time talking to Laura at that time, and I expected a much different agenda going forward from her and from the City Council, especially with her as deputy mayor. But I didn't get that. When my kids announced on media that I was considering running for City Council, all of a sudden all of the parents of friends from school and everything else were contacting us with their own stories of exactly the same sorts of problems. I'm running for City Council because I want to see a City Council that responds to residents, that's accountable, can be reached, returns calls, and responds meaningfully and honestly consults and works with us. Not, we have to do consultation radically differently and listens to what we want.
Sorry, Lori, you're out of time, but thank you very much. Over to you, Chris Fraser. You have 60 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, I am fortunate to live in a vibrant, family-friendly ward like Orléans West-Innes. We have the best of both worlds, urban-style shops and services complemented by plenty of green space, parks, and gardens. I practice physical prudence in my personal life and would bring that same mindset to City Hall. Distinguishing between our wants and our needs is the key to a balanced approach to governing. My mission, if elected, will be to monitor and improve the quality of life for my constituents. A strong focus will be placed on maintaining and improving core services such as road, sidewalk maintenance, healthcare at the municipal level, and emergency services such as police, fire, and ambulance. On October 24th, or at an advance poll, vote for Chris Fraser. You can learn more about my platform at votechris.ca. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks to all of you, by the way. Thanks for all the time that you've committed to your campaign so far and for joining us here in studio for this debate. I wish you all the best of luck. And of course, I want to thank you at home for tuning in. You can find our other debates on our website at rogerstv.com. And a reminder, please get out and vote. Voting Day, there's advanced polls, as Chris just pointed out, and voting day is October the 24th. Thanks so much for watching this edition of your local campaign.